Welcome to the Violet Fog As I Know It podcast. This is proudly hosted by the How Do You Health Network. If you haven't checked out their other podcasts, they are so good, especially if you are into health and wellness and biohacking and all that. You need to check out their podcast network just in general and see their other podcast people because they're doing something really incredible. So we're hosted on that network. We're here today. Today's going to be an interesting episode. I put up a story on Insta and I was like, what should we talk about this time? And it's something that I've actually wanted to write about for a long time, but and I can't even tell you how many times I wrote it, tore it down, wrote it, tore it down. But now we're just going to be speaking on it. And it is my tumor diagnosis story. So I'm going to be talking about what it is, how I got the diagnosis, the cause behind it, the lows, when things started to pick up, what's next. I'm also like woven throughout. I just hope that you get little tips and tricks for yourself if you're healing from your own thing. Maybe you're on like a gut healing journey or something like that, some type of healing journey. I'm going to try and weave in some advice. I do want to say, like, this is not a sob story, okay? I will share the lows with you for sure, but like it ends with, at the end of the day, I am in control of my destiny. I am happy. This is not defining for me, like there's no need to feel bad for me. I don't feel bad for me. I don't want sympathy whatsoever. It's like cuz honestly like there's no need. If anything, I hope to be like an example of you can get a pretty crushing diagnosis and still kick ass in life and go on and be good. So I just want to say that, like, please, like, no sympathy. It's not a sob story. Okay, so let's just get right into it. So what I have is called a prolactinoma. It is a tumor on my pituitary gland, and your pituitary gland sits on your brain. And it is something that as it grows, I mean, it can impact things like vision. Like if it was to get like really big, like you can go blind from it. It can be, so here's the good thing. First off, the good thing, it's non-cancerous. Thank God, but it still is serious. It can make women infertile. Not always, but like it's definitely can. In fact, that's like one of the biggest concerns that women have when they get this diagnosis. It can cause extreme fatigue, mood swings. It can cause your body to act as though it is pregnant, but you're really not pregnant. And fatigue is like a huge thing. It can cause hair loss. There's a ton of things that come with this tumor, but I do believe, while in the beginning it's scary, I really do believe it's manageable, and I'll share what I've done. But that's what it is. And so this tumor will grow on your pituitary gland, and it'll secrete prolactin, which is basically the pregnancy hormone. There's also studies that show that it is very much tied to stress, and you don't want super high prolactin levels like that. It's different. Like when you're not pregnant, you don't want that, and so that's what it does. And so that's the tumor. If it gets really too big, or it's just like heavily actively secreting prolactin and the medication isn't working, because when you get diagnosed with this, you get put on a specific medication. You can get it surgically removed. However, like, you really do hope that you can manage it just with the medication and other lifestyle changes alone, because it's still brain surgery at the end of the day. So that's what it is. So that's what I got diagnosed with last year, about 13 months ago. So this is how I got the diagnosis. I was feeling really run down and fatigued for like a few months. I also was not getting my period, and I've always been like a little bit more irregular with my period. Now I'm not. Like, flash forward, I'm not, but like I've always been a little bit irregular with my period, even with all my health practices, everything like that. I really always believed that it kind of stemmed from just years of abuse to my body from addictions, and I was anorexic for a really long time, which that's super hormonally destructive. So I always felt like my body was just like still repairing from that. Therefore, I was irregular, but hoped that one day like I wouldn't be. But I had been like irregular. Like, I did not get my period for like 4 months, and I was like, okay, like this is definitely not good. I was really fatigued, like just more than just to the point where I was like, I really notice it. My partner notices it. And then my boobs were like super swollen. And I was like, and I was also like, this is so weird, but I was lactating a little bit, which that's what happens when you get this, or this is what can happen when you first get this tumor, especially like right before the tumor diagnosis. And I was like, what the fuck? This is trippy and scary, and something is going on. And I had actually gone to my urologist because I have, I like see her just for bladder stuff, like here and there. And I was like, I know it's not like in your scope to usually like order like tests, but can you like order some tests for me because like I'm not getting my period and blah blah blah. She's like, yeah, for sure. And so comes back and I have really really high prolactin. And she calls me. She's like, you need to get into it. Like she basically like kind of left it a little bit obscure. And she was like, you need to go see a doctor like right away to talk about your prolactin level because it's like really. I don't want you to freak out, but it's really high. I was like, okay. And so I go to a doctor and it was so scary because this doctor like freaked out when he saw my prolactin levels. He was like, "Are you sure you're not pregnant?" I was like, "I'm definitely not pregnant. I just took a pregnancy test." That's like gone through my head a ton of times because like I'm not getting my period. He's like, "All right." He's like, "Well, I really think that there's a chance that you have a tumor on your pituitary gland." I was like, "What?" I was like freaked out. Like that's the last thing that you expect to come out of someone's mouth. And so I was like, okay. And he's like, you need to get in like right now to get an MRI. And he's like, because these things, like if they get too big, like you can suddenly go blind or like lose vision. I was like, holy fuck, okay. Like, it's so like this is like freaking me out. He's like, I'm like 90% certain that, this is what you have is a tumor on your pituitary gland. And so he like calls his endocrinologist. He's like, this person, it's really hard to get into this guy, but I'm gonna see if he can do me a favor. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like so important that like you're calling in a favor for me. Like now I'm like getting a little bit freaked out, but also grateful you're doing that. But so I go get an MRI, and then it comes back. I like meet with an endocrinologist and everything. It comes back that I do have a tumor on my pituitary gland. And in that like space of time between talking to that doctor and getting the MRI was super scary because that's like, I think I had like 5 days just to think about it without a diagnosis, without like what is going on. I remember calling my parents and like on one hand, I just kind of wanted to like hide it and be like, I'm not going to tell anything to anyone except Dan until I know for sure because I don't want to scare anyone. But at the same time, it seemed like it was so certain that that was a reality, and I really needed that emotional support. And so I did call my parents. I was like, "This is what's going on." I remember my dad being like, "Oh my gosh," just being like, "Oh," like, and nothing ever gets him down, and I could tell that even he was scared. And so those 5 days were just tough, full of a ton of different tears, and just was so scared. Got my MRI. Turns out that that's like true that I have a tumor, and I was like, and then that's when like the research starts and like the like unknown, right? Because I like selfishly like I research things that I'm really into and that like have to do with me. And I think everyone is that way. I had never even thought about a pituitary tumor, so I had never researched anything about that before. And so the first thing is, I mean, of course I prayed about it and I like realized, okay, I need to go on this medication called cabergoline. And they also have like bromocriptine and like something else, but it's basically like just this little pill that you take. And the hopes is that, and it's actually pretty successful at shrinking a tumor or at least decreasing your prolactin levels. I don't think that like deep down I really do not think that that is the end all be all. Like I knew that there was going to be more to my healing than just taking this medication. I knew it. And as much as I am about like functional medicine shrinking everything on its own, like I was up against a tumor here, and I was like, I actually don't really have time on my side right now, so I need to take this medication. And this medication is the kind of thing where you're either on it for life or you're on it for a while. The tumor will shrink, but it's very often that the tumor grows back, and then you have to go back on cabergoline again. I am telling myself that one day I'm going to be completely healed from this, though. Like, I don't care what any Western medicine doctor tells me. I know for a fact I'm going to be healed of this. So let's first like talk the lows of it, right? Like, because I'm sure maybe you've had a diagnosis or you're going through like something like health wise that can just be like super tough. And I don't want to like sugarcoat things. I want to be like really honest with you. Like it was super, super tough. Like, I had started taking medication. Number one, that medication in the beginning can make you like pretty sick and you just feel icky. It's just the best way to explain it. You feel icky. Now I take it like present day and I feel fine, but like that workup period just sucked. But even besides that, what came with the tumor for me was hair loss. That was also like something I had noticed in the beginning that caused me to go get that blood work. Hair loss, and that's so like I just have a sympathy for women and men that I have never had before because I'd never gone through it before. I mean, I was always like I could imagine, but when you lose hair and it starts to be like really, noticeable for you, it's kind of like chipping away at your physical identity. And that just opens up a can of worms for a lot of different things because you start to feel a little bit more insecure. And then at the same time, it's a sign that like something is wrong, right? Like physically seeing the hair just come out. And it's also like a realization that like for me at least, I was like, how much was I leaning on my looks as like a crutch in like certain areas of life? Because now I am like facing the very real reality that like what if I lose all of my hair? What is that going to mean for me? And with losing hair also came the like when you take a hit on your self-esteem, it does like it just kind of like changes your frequency and energy a little bit, and like while Dan was and is, sensitive and kind about it, he's also like in the beginning, I think it was so tough for him because I was talking about it all the time. Like all the time. I was so obsessive over losing my hair for that first like, you know, probably like 6 months. Like I would my emotional I would just like emotionally spike like throughout the day. It was just so tough on me. I mean, and I think that was tough for him, but also it's probably tough for him because again, my energy, my frequency is changing a little bit, right? Like my self-esteem was getting like lower and lower, and so that kind of changes me at least temporarily, right, as a person or how I like present myself, which I'm sure is really tough on Dan. Remember, we're going to get to the highs of this too, so things do turn around, but I'm just kind of like painting the picture of like where it was at. um and so then another like low is fatigue. And also at this time I'm diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and Hashimoto's, hair loss and fatigue is also like two huge symptoms of Hashimoto's and being in a Hashimoto's flare. And so and Hashimoto's runs on my mom's side of the family. It I also like don't know if it was like tied to the tumor or what, but thyroid issues are super prevalent in women. Just side note, I always like tell women, if something's off, please get your thyroid checked, and please do not just chase TSH or have a doctor just do TSH. Please get a full thyroid panel: T3, T4, TPO, TSH, thyroglobulin, and get a copy of that and show those ranges to a functional medicine doctor, or do your own research and make sure it's in functional, not conventional range. It is so important. Anyways, I digress. So fatigue, massive problem for me. I mean, I felt so run down and like lethargic, and it was because truly, like for a while, your body does think my body was acting as though it was pregnant, but I wasn't pregnant. So that's just weird. Also dealt with anger and sadness, like anger of like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Angry that like this is something that I now have to deal with. Like I already have all this other like health shit that I'm dealing with, and now I have to deal with this. But at the same time, I also had this thought of like, not why me, but like why not me, like, and we'll get into that later, and that actually really helped me. But anger, sadness, for a while there, I like really felt like I was like grieving my old self. And I think in this moment, it was important, but this also turned around, which I'm going to mention in the highs. But I'm just, again, being honest, like I really felt like I was just kind of like grieving my old self, not energetic, losing my hair, like my boobs are swollen. I'm just like not feeling like that great whatsoever. Actually, I didn't really mind the boobs being swollen that much because sometimes I was like, cool, like bigger boobs for once, didn't have to get a boob job, but that only lasted for so long. But I felt blah though overall. Like I just felt really blah, and I was just like feeling like this was gonna. I had moments where I'm like, is this just gonna be my reality? Because I am, I'm feeling like it could be, and this is scary. So had that, and then again, I turned it around. I'll let you know, but. And then I had a period of denial, and I was just like, no, I'm going to be like my best, strongest self. I just started like just deciding that I was just going to push myself to be like healthier, better, and like in a way that was just like kind of obsessive. It truly was like this denial thing. No, this tumor is not going to get in my way. I like had plans to get into like the best shape I've ever been in. I'm going to hit the gym every day, blah blah blah, and doesn't matter how like fatigued I am. That is when I'm going to give it like my all. There's a few things to unpack on that. Number one, like placing this like emphasis on physicality, which I really felt like I was doing to like compensate for the loss of my hair. And then also just denial and like trying to like say like, no, this is not going to hold me back, instead of just kind of like naturally going with it and like just like submitting a little bit. And then I burned myself out even more in the gym. And like, so went through that denial phase because I'm human, like I don't care how much I know about health and wellness. I'm still human. And so I went, had like my little denial phase, not anymore. Okay. And then, like feeling, I just like felt like I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to really like look at my life choices here. I also, on another emotional level, I was like, what about like my relationships? I was so worried that people were gonna start to treat me differently, and I almost felt like I had this new part of my story that felt like baggage, and I did not like that. I was just like, this sucks. Anytime I get close to someone now, like this is a big part of my story. I mean, am I gonna have to like share this, or like are people just gonna treat me differently? Like I pray to God they don't, because that would like really, really, really suck, So I like worried about that, but I think I do a really good job of like setting boundaries of like I don't like I don't like sympathy, therefore don't even think about treating me differently because like I like won't even tolerate it, so that ended up being okay, but okay, so the lows were low. Like it was really, really low. And I still like deal with some of this stuff cycling in here and there. But I feel like I have had tremendous growth from the last year. And I'm going to tell you some things that this is like what I did. These are the highs now. So the beauty in getting diagnosed with something or having like a chronic illness is the power of research and knowledge. You start to become so self-empowered when you start learning about your body and learning about the different systems. This is why I am so passionate about breaking down the things that I learn into girl talk and like really like easy ways to understand it, because then it sticks. Then it sticks with people. And when it sticks, then you start making different life choices. You can start to make different connections. It starts just to become super interesting, and you become empowered. And I started becoming truly so empowered with this tumor. I was like, I'm smart as hell. I know what I got to do, the thing is like when I got like diagnosed, it was like there was no diet change that I could make. I already have a super clean diet, maybe like some tweaks here and there. I started eating a little bit more red meat for my thyroid. Um, I'm already like sleeping enough. I am doing all these wellness practices all the time. I like put such a focus on detox, like, and then I like you start to realize like nothing in life like happens just like happens. Like there's always like some correlation. And I started realizing this makes sense why I have this tumor. This makes so much sense to me. And because it makes sense to me, I'm now going to be able to reverse it. I believe I'll be able to reverse it. So, for instance, like I really do believe that a big cause of the tumor is stress related, because there are studies that show that the pituitary gland will secrete excess prolactin when it's chronically and overstressed. And some stress is a good thing. Do not get me wrong here. Like, you don't want a life without stress. But like chronic, always being in fight or flight, that is terrible for your HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenals. And this is the shit that I sing all day long when I talk about potions and why adaptogens are so important. is to protect that HPA axis and help soothe it. And I wasn't doing enough of that. But I was like, okay, there's a reason why I've been so obsessed with like health and wellness. It's led me to this point where like I'm going to know what to do, like I know what to do. I feel super empowered. Imagine if I was starting from like stage 0 of like not knowing about like my diet, not knowing about like these wellness practices, all these things. So I felt like well equipped in that way. But I really did feel like, oh my gosh, this is one huge thing I have missed when it comes to just wellness, total body healing, being my best and highest self is work that I have not done on stress. I really like realized that I put stress on the back burner, and I really do think that come off as like a very like laid back person, and I am go with the flow. You decide where to eat lunch, you whatever. I'm so down. I'm easy. But I'm also an introvert and I'm extremely cerebral. It is very rare. Like I really just think I have this own little world going on in my head at any given time. It's why I'm such a space cadet. Why I'm always forgetting stuff, because like forgetting things like why did I walk into this room, not like I have a very selective memory though. Health and wellness stuff, I will read like one paper and I swear I'll remember everything. But in general, like I can be kind of forgetful. I'm like spacey. I'm just very cerebral. And with that comes sometimes like these toxic thoughts or these like stories that you're telling in your head can get trapped in your head. And if you're not doing anything about it, you're not releasing it. And I was just like the primary case for that. I was just always stressing about things. I'm a people pleaser. I am like, and people pleasing is like, you got to work on that. Trust me, because that it just like can honestly keep you in fight or flight if you're always worried about another person's, perception of you, or if you hurt their feelings or whatever. Um, so I was just like, wow, I have like always just been so stressed and never really like dealt with it. I would write stories on the blog of just like these very personal stuff, and that felt very cathartic for me in the moment. But I would stop there. I would never really like seek out other coping mechanisms for stress. I truly like I really like didn't start working on coping mechanisms for stress or trauma release until this tumor diagnosis. That is a long time to be dealing with that and for trauma to be residing in the body. I also started, realizing like, wow, trauma can be a huge implication for your physical body and like the things that it can manifest and things that it can create. I think about like just stress and trauma, and with this like tumor diagnosis, I had had so much stuff go wrong before with health, which is why I'm so passionate about it now, that I felt like I was always kind of like looking over my shoulder for something to go wrong. Like it was so weird. I believed in the body's capability to heal. Every day I'm in my DM sending like messages to girls being like, I know you're going to heal, and like believing it. For me, something was like, I was like doubting myself in a way, or even like doubting God. And again, always looking over my shoulder, like something else is going to go wrong. And that keeps your body in fight or flight. When your body is in fight or flight, it's taken away from your immune system, your gut health, neurotransmitters. I mean, it is horrible to be stuck in fight or flight and like just operate on that all the time. The only time I was getting into parasympathetic mode, literally the only time I was getting into parasympathetic mode is sleeping. And I do not believe that that is enough. Now I am like here to say that is not enough. You have to have pauses throughout the day of like deep breathing. You need to do coping mechanisms for stress. It's so important. Whether you have a tumor, an autoimmune condition, if you are on a gut healing journey, you have to make combating stress, releasing trauma a part of your healing plan. I promise you that is going to move huge boulders for you. And so I started like working on that. I did this like trauma release. There's this place called Pacific Trauma Center in Folsom, and they are the best of the best of the best. And I did Zoom stuff with them, and I did something called brain spotting to release some trauma, big time trauma that I was like, I need to like flush this out of my body, because I know for a fact it is just not doing me any favors. And doing all the stress work, doing the mental work, doing the trauma work, it has left me feeling so much lighter, and therefore has helped me tremendously in my healing. Another thing that I started doing for fatigue is I was like, maybe I can't do Like it's always multifactorial. It's not like just the tumor, and it could be affecting other things, but there's other things, reasons why I am experiencing fatigue. And I started thinking about, this is so random, but I started thinking about the methylation cycle. And the methylation cycle is so important. Number one, about 50% of the population has an MTHFR gene mutation. And I certainly do. And I was like, it's been a while since I've like done some extra stuff to help my methylation, because I'm a big believer in like, yes, maintain all the time, but like every now and then show extra love to specific parts of your body. Just this like tune up, like a facial for your methylation cycle, things like that. And so I was like, and here's the thing to think about methylation and fatigue and energy and how they come together. So methylation is like what uses nutrients, vitamins, and turns it into energy, basically. And so if you have a hard time methylating, you need to support that extra. And by supporting that extra, your food's going to become more effective if you're methylating, and therefore you will get more energy. So I was like, all right, I'm going to think about my methylation cycle more. So I started doing more, and you do that by like more detox. There is also some supplements that you can take. I use Bliss by MSW Nutrition. If you've been a listener of this podcast, like I have given you so many ways in which I utilize this. I'm not someone that just like talks about something and like I will not give you context about how I use it in my life. No, like this is like very, very real for me, and why I did want to work with MSW Nutrition, and why I love them. They have this product called Bliss. And so a lot of people like think that it's great because it helps boost serotonin and dopamine. And I love that. I love that like so much. That's incredible. That's going to help you, of course, with fatigue in the moment, but it's going to do so much more than that. So MSW Nutrition's product called Bliss, it's like this little packet. It's this like lemon lime flavor. You dump it under your tongue and it dissolves. It's sour. And it does so much more than just help boost some serotonin and dopamine, especially if you're deficient. The more deficient you are, the more you will feel it. But it really helps with the methylation cycle. It is so great for the methylation cycle. It is so great for liver detox. And detox, methylation, they go hand in hand. And it has something called SAMe plus TMG. The two of them together, that to me is a dream combo. Like it's such a genius, intelligent combination. And so I was like, I am going to go through a phase right now. Like I had just been like using my Bliss like here and there, but I was like, oh, I'm actually going to I'm going to buy a box, and I'm going to do this for a whole like month straight, just to give myself like that facial for my methylation cycle. So I started doing that. I highly recommend that if you want to try it out. That my code is always Violet Fog. I started working on my liver health even more. I've said this before when I give energy tips to people, like look at your detoxification pathways. Think about your liver. If you're holding on to extra toxins, if you're burdened by heavy metals, things like that, you need to show love to that liver, and always be sweating. Eat your cruciferous vegetables if you do well with them, because it's the precursor to DIM, helps dump out excess estrogen, and helps with like other toxins. I mean, it's great for your liver. Take Liver Love. That is another liver supplement by MSW Nutrition. If you ever go to their site, like you'll notice they have a huge emphasis on the liver, which I think is really, really cool. That was another like tune up for me. I just started taking extra liver support. I also was like, I wonder what else is kind of like burdening me down, because like my fatigue, was at like an all-time low, and I was like, I know that there's other things that I can do that are really going to help me, because again, with any diagnosis, there's multifactorial stuff. So then I like did some heavy metal testing, and that was the first time I'd ever done heavy metal testing. I invested in it, saved some money for like a couple months, and I was like, I'm going to go do this. And realized I had super high aluminum in my body. And the thing about heavy metals and why you want to get those out, that's why you always do want to support your detoxification pathways, is heavy metals. Like that can be such a burden on the body, and that can also lead to a ton of fatigue. And so I was like, aluminum, what the hell? Like my functional medicine doctor was like, do you wear deodorant? I was like, actually, I don't. And like not to toot my own horn, I was just talking to Baldo, who's the CEO of How Do You Health. But like about this, I was like, I'm at a point, I really don't need deodorant. I swear to God, like I don't have BO. Like I think it's just because my diet is like perfectly set, and I have such a focus on liver detoxification, opening my detox pathways, and like, I just think that that serves me well to the point where I really don't need deodorant. And if I did, I would do a natural deodorant. So basically I told him, I was like, no, I don't use a deodorant with aluminum in it. And then like we figured out like a thing that can cause it is if you're always near car exhaust fumes. And I was like, when I lived in San Francisco for 4.5 years, I walked so much to the point where my friends thought they literally thought I was nutso. Like I would sometimes walk like 3 miles to go meet them somewhere and then like 3 miles back. I was just such a walker. And in San Francisco, the streets are tight. And wherever you're walking, you are right next to a car. It's not like you're on this like beautiful trail out in trees and everything. Like you are right up next to a ton of cars no matter where you're walking. A lot of them are like at stoplights because there's traffic and there's just car exhaust fumes. I was like, whoa, that probably contributed to my aluminum toxicity. And I think that you can live in San Francisco and be fine, but like, get your heavy metals checked and like just work on your detoxification stuff. Clearly at that time I was not working on detoxification of heavy metals. And then another thing that I thought it could be was I was like, okay. So in my 20s, like I was a little bit of a stoner and I would use like a lighter, and like a secret stoner. You would never know. And whenever I tell people that, they're like, what? Like they're shocked. But like, yeah, I really was. And I still love a little THC like here and there. I just like, I don't even use it like near as much as I did in my 20s. It's like very sporadic now. But in my 20s, I was like mega depressed. I had huge gut issues, all this stuff. It was a big crutch for me. I definitely was a little bit of a stoner. So I was like, I'm using a lighter all the time and that can have some aluminum in it. I was like, I think that that's also it. So like, it's so cool figuring out things about your body because you start to crack the code and get to the root cause and then you just eliminate the root cause. So I started on a heavy metal detox thing, and I swear after like giving this like rev up to my methylation cycle, when I started detoxing some heavy metals, my fatigue also started to lift. And at the exact same time, because the body's holistic and everything is tied together, my hormones started to stabilize and get better. Hormones, by the way, though, takes a long time. Like, and they are so finicky. It's so freaking annoying, especially for women. They are so, so, so finicky. So like you might start to see improvement and then like something shifts off. Start to see improvement and something shifts off. All I can say is like, just don't get upset if that happens. You can get them back in alignment, but like expect there to be some like highs and lows as you like figure things out, like with your thyroid medication, whatever, with like your practices, with how you exercise, everything. Like so much is tied to it, but like just be okay with like some highs and lows, but always have the goal to be hormonally protective to yourself with all the practices, all the practices that you do. So, the cabergoline, my medicine started working. I was working on my methylation, doing like heavy metal stuff. I was working on stress, trauma release more than anything ever. I was getting more and more empowered every single day with just like light bulbs going off left and right of like, if I do this, I could maybe expect this result. But I'm going to tell you what, at the end of the day, I really do believe that one of the biggest things that is healing me is that I'm working on stress more than I ever have. And I even have my own little case study now for this. So I was working on stress more than I ever have, but it's not like it's perfect, right? And like, so we went on this 6-week road trip. Wasn't supposed to be that long, but our transmission blew, and then we had to get that fixed, and that took weeks. But anyways, we went on this long road trip, and like right before, like a couple months before, was just a particularly like really, really stressful few months, and I was putting my stress practice kind of like more at the wayside, and my sleep wasn't like as good. Things were just getting a little bit just extra stressful. And so, lo and behold, I go and get blood work, and guess what? My prolactin levels are going up and my antibodies are going up. And the only variable I could even pinpoint was the fact that my stress work was kind of like going by the wayside. I wasn't taking my moments as much to work. I wasn't even like drinking my potions as much. That's something that like that's a guaranteed pause in my day that I take very, very seriously. But I wasn't like, really doing those things. And so I knew that when I go on this like trip, I'm like, my main focus has to be extra sleep, rest, stress. That is it. Like, yes, I still have to work, but like, beyond social time, new adventures, all this stuff, what I'm going to be working on, like I'm going to be sleeping in a little bit every single day. If I want to take a nap, I'm taking it. And I am going to be proud and happy to do it because I deserve it. And this is like how I'm going to heal. So that whole time that I was gone, I can't even tell you how much I put an emphasis on that stuff. And I come back and I feel rejuvenated. I feel good. My energy has now been through the freaking roof. I just feel it's just, and it's like, guess what? That was free. Like the free things move the basics. That's what I call whatever is free is the basics. Move the biggest boulders. God intelligently created our bodies, knowing the things that we need. He talks about rest and sleep, even in the Bible. And again, if you're not like into God, that's okay. But you know me, like I'm always weaving God into my story because, like, to me, because it's my story. I'm just being honest. Like that's what I noticed for me, and that's where I derive inspiration from. And I'm like, wow, this just makes so much sense. So I come back and I'm feeling, really, really, really good. And so like just please don't discount rest if you have a chronic illness. It's so important. My hair loss it's still happening, but it is definitely slowing. And the thing about hair loss that I've just learned is, it is the last thing to correct, unfortunately. It's like the first thing to go and the last thing to correct because your body doesn't view like you having hair is like a life or death situation. Getting air in your lungs, that's a life or death situation. Your heart pumping, that's a life or death situation. Getting enough like hormone to a specific area in your body, that could be a life or death situation. Having hair is not life or death. So your body it's gonna be like, oh, we need energy. Well, your hair is gonna be the first thing to go. Like, oh, like, we're doing repairing. The last thing we're gonna like hair loss is the last thing that we're gonna repair. So just keep in mind that it can take a long time, but I believe that it is possible, and I do believe that a huge part of hair loss, and I feel like I could do a whole podcast on hair loss, and I'd like to because I can't tell you how often I talk about this in DMs about hair loss stuff, but stress, each hair follicle has its own HPA axis. So that means hair is very much tied to stress. So you need to like understand that. So if I'm like super stressed all the time, that's not going to be doing my hair any favors. So like now, like I do notice that my hair loss is slowing. It's still happening, but it's slowing, and that tells me that I'm healing. Even if it was still going hardcore though, right now, like I have made peace with my hair loss. I'm like, my hair's not as full, thick, long as it used to be, but that's okay. I'm still worth it. I can still rock it. Worst case scenario, I've already just kind of like accepted it. If I ever have to get like a wig, that's cool. Like I'm so okay with it. I am so much more than my hair. And stressing about it, hating myself is going to do me no favors. Everyone deserves to love themselves and make the best out of every situation. And it has made me just like less focused on looks in general, which I think is a super healthy thing. Um, and so, yeah, so like things have definitely started to turn up. I am a little bit nervous for my MRI coming up in November because that will be a very like telltale sign of like if the tumor has shrunk or not. Uh, what I'm going to be considering a win is if it has stayed the same size. Ideally, I would like to see it shrink, of course. But if it even stays the same size, I'm going to view that as a win. If it grows, that's going to be scary, but I'm not, I'm just going to, like, why even put myself through that mentally right now? I'm not even going to think about that until I get my results. So that is what's coming next. Um, I want to leave you just with encouragement. If you have a chronic illness, if you're healing, if you're on a gut journey that you feel is just going to last years, you need to have such faith in yourself that you are going to heal, okay? I don't care if you're like struggling financially, if you have like a partner who's not supporting you, you still have control over your life and your body, okay? No life circumstance will take that away from you. You deserve to live in a body where you can send your central nervous system signals of safety. Okay, you need to do that. I promise you that working on your stress, absolving all like trauma that has been living and sticking in your body, this is going to move huge needles for you. If you find periods of the day to get into your parasympathetic, that is rest or digest, you will see more healing. I very much believe that that sleep is not enough. sleep is the most important thing, but I think like if you really want to like see accelerated healing, work on stress more than you ever have. You know, do you have emotional spikes throughout the day? Like learn to soften those and do things that soften them. I'm so passionate about my potion company because its whole mission is around supporting the adrenals and the HPA axis. No matter what blend we come out with, that will always be an underlying theme. And I will never want to sell that product without saying, like, don't use this just and drink it and scroll through your phone. Please take a moment throughout your day to pause for 5 minutes, to do a body scan, to send yourself feelings of safety, and learn to have a life this way where you like, my friend Faith says like punctuating throughout the day of just feelings of just pausing. It is going to be so tremendous for your healing, and you will get to where you want to be way quicker than if you just rely on diet, biohacking, and all that alone. Surround yourself with a team if you can. The guys at MSW here, like when I got my diagnosis, they were one of the first people that I talked to and like heard me out, encouraging. Like if you can ever see a functional Western doctor, a functional health coach, a functional anything, whatever you can save your money for, ask for it for a birthday present, for a Christmas, you know, see someone that has a functional background that's going to treat your body holistically, because Western medicine likes to just focus in on one thing. They don't look at like the body as a whole. And I am very much pro Western medicine. I'm glad that it exists, but I am not for Western medicine without the acknowledgement of functional medicine, without the acknowledgement that we are our own greatest healers. So, like just understand that you are going to heal in a holistic way. It's everything is tied together. And that's the beautiful thing. As you're healing your gut, as you're healing the neurotransmitters in your brain or whatever, it's going to heal other things alongside. So it is always so worth it. And just stay on your healing journey. Don't ever give up. Know that like no matter what setbacks that you might have, all of a sudden be working so hard and get this blood work back and nothing has budged or it's regressed. Don't give up, because there is going to be something that works for you. But that is the key. You can't give up, and you have to be excited for healing. You have to work on the stress again. Keep doing research, keep talking to people. Trust your gut feeling, right? If you are like, "Hey, I feel like if I got just one extra hour of sleep, it would really make big moves for me." Listen to that and do it. And just know that like it's going to be good. And you might have good days and bad days, but like you can have a really, really great life in the midst of a healing journey, and healing is possible. I started a business alongside like this whole thing, like I'm not letting this tumor or my Hashimoto's diagnosis like take away from this life that I want to live and these people that I want to serve in my life. So that's my advice for you. If you ever want to talk, just know you can always send me a DM and we can talk about like whatever is going on. I'm here for you. I'm so grateful that you listened, that you were my friend, and I take our relationship really seriously. So just know I never want it to be a one-way street. Like if there's ever things that you want me to talk about more, share my research on, I'm here for you. So thank you so much for joining. We will talk next week.